Hello, everyone, and welcome to EllieMD's live educational series and to our very first men's health series. We're so glad you're here as we kick off a brand new monthly series dedicated to exploring men's health more deeply, from hormone optimization to energy, performance, and longevity. At EllieMD, we go beyond telehealth. We're building a community rooted in education, innovation, and personalized support. And this series is just one more way we're empowering people to take charge of their wellness journey. Today, we're honored to welcome Dr. Julian Gershon, a true pioneer in regenerative medicine and men's health. Dr. Gershon is the founder of the Aspen Institute for Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine and brings over 40 years of experience in helping men enhance their vitality, performance, and lifespan. His work spans hormone replacement therapy, PRP, peptide treatments, and personalized cell therapies, all focused on restoring strength, energy, and confidence at every stage of life. Dr. Gershon, we're so thrilled to have you here with us as we begin this powerful new conversation around men's health. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm excited. And, this is a great platform. I think I placed my first order for some peptides and products from you a couple of weeks ago. So, very excited about not only saving a little money, but sharing this with others. And so, very happy to be invited to be part of it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on and helping us educate our community and for being part of this vibrant community. Before we get started, can you just share a little more about yourself? What sparked your journey in this field and your experience, and share a little bit more if you can.
Sure. Well, happy to. So, I have kind of an interesting background and, I'll stick with 40 plus years, although it's actually 45. But, my background, board certified in three specialties in family medicine and sports medicine and anti-aging and regenerative medicine. I've done a stem cell fellowship. I was the head team physician at the University of North Texas for 20 years before I moved to Colorado in 2010. At that time, my spouse passed and I decided to start over. I grew up in northern Michigan ski racing, so it's been on my checklist to live in Aspen since I was, I think, about 13 or 14, the first time that my dad, we had the boys' family road trip and came out here skiing when Snowmass opened a long time ago. And I made a decision then. I remember telling him, I'm going to live here one day. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure, son. Like, okay. And, but I am. So, I moved here in 2010. I've been here 15 years. I love sports medicine. I've treated, gosh, I can't even tell you. I've attended thousands of high school football games, every single Division I football game for 20 years at the University of North Texas. I've been an Olympic physician, I think four times with judo, boxing. I got to go to Chile in the summer with the U.S. freestyle ski team. And so done some really fun things. Almost made it there myself, but not quite. So anyway, so that's what brought me here. And, with my sports medicine background, and I talk about it a little in my book, a buddy of mine, Bob Goldman, founded the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine back in the very late 80s. In fact, in 89, he and I had been on the board of our National Osteopathic Academy of Sports Medicine together. And I show up at this board meeting. I'm like, where's Bob? And somebody said, he's doing some anti-aging thing. I'm like, he's lost his mind. He's lost his mind. And it wasn't 10 or 11 years later. In about 2000, I showed up at a conference in Las Vegas. And even 25 years ago, there were over 5,000 physicians from all over the world eager to learn about regenerative medicine, anti-aging medicine. Then we weren't doing the stem cell therapy work that I do now and have been for going on 13 years. But hormone therapy, bioidentical hormones, balancing for men and women. And at that time, as I was, I grew up as a high school and college ski racer. I was an aging athlete. I didn't like the way that sounded or felt, and I decided I wasn't going to go down without a fight. And so I started investigating testosterone replacement for myself, started, doing what I needed to do, learning everything to make sure I did it safely, and then started sharing that with my patients. And then as time went by and I attended more and more courses, I went through the board certification program. I've done advanced training through World Link Medical in Salt Lake with Dr. Neil Rouzier, who's been my mentor for many years, probably taught more physicians than anyone in the world. And so here I am, started with one room on a Friday in a friend's office to eventually Thursdays and Fridays to now in this beautiful setting and beautiful office that I have at Obermeyer Center here in Aspen. And that's all we do all day long is hormone replacement therapy for men and women, stem cell therapy, exosome therapy. We do some aesthetics with exosomes for facial rejuvenation, PRP, and exosomes for hair growth. There's just, a lot of new things that come along. We do high dose ozone therapy and blood purification, something called EBO2, removes heavy metals, toxins, microplastics, mycotoxins, candida, viral particles. And so there's just seems like always something new coming down the pike, so to speak. And I love learning. And so, I've made it my quest to be the best I can and to share that with my patients and myself personally. I want to feel my best all day, every day. And I do. We have our own pharmaceutical grade vitamin line. We do IV vitamin therapy, everything that we can to help optimize individual function. And that, as a sports medicine doctor, that's what I always did. It was about performance and being the best athlete you could. And then that just expanded into everyone is affected by it. And we talked about this earlier, and well, how does this happen, and when and where, and for the guys on and for you ladies that are listening to your grouchy husbands, I promise you it starts a lot earlier than you think. All of us, men and women, start losing hormones as young as 30, 1 to 3% a year. When I started doing this 20 years ago, my average patient was probably 55. And then as the next decade rolled by, it was in the 40s. Well, I have probably 4 dozen men, if not more than that, in their 30s. And, it's actually of epidemic proportions, from plastic water bottles to, we don't have as much Teflon around, but from cookware, from estrogenic compounds, the manhood has been bombarded, and it's all a direct toxic insult to the factory, to their testicles, and they don't work the same. So fortunately, there's more public awareness, I think, and ads, low T ads with what's his name, Frank Smith, or whoever the big hit, the baseball player. And there's always somebody promoting a product. Unfortunately, most of those don't work real well, but it increases awareness. So guys start thinking, as they start developing some symptoms, hey, I wonder if this could be low T. They don't want to share that. They probably won't tell you. They may or may not tell me, but sooner or later, they work their way into the setting where, yeah, I had a blood test, but my family doctor said I was a normal. Well, I don't do anything normal. It's all about optimal, being in the upper ranges of normal for men and women with all hormones, like you were in your 20s. We don't know many sick 20-year-olds. They don't have high cholesterol, high blood sugar, high hypertension, etc. And as hormones decline, we develop the big silent killer, inflammation. And that's why many of these peptides that your company has are so valuable. I love BPC 157 for that reason. Inflammation is a silent killer. And you have to establish hormone balance for men and women. I have more male patients than female. And it's just maybe my approach, maybe not, but nobody's immune to the effects. And it affects everything across the board from, performance in the bedroom to athletic performance to having a longer recovery time. You come home from the gym and it's like, man, I can't do legs today. I can't do this or that because I'm still sore from Monday. And, that's not the way it should be. And so, yes, the peptides we use can help that, but we have to establish youthful levels of testosterone for men and women. It's very important that we have that's a foundation that happens 10 or 20 years before menopause. I know we're talking about guys today, but we have a captive audience, so why not? It's a big deal, and nobody's immune to those effects. And so it's important that you know where you're at and that we address things that can significantly help. We measure human growth hormone in everyone because I call it the icing on the cake. Baking the cake is balancing other hormones, vitamins, nutrients, diet, exercise, lifestyle, sleep quality, everything counts. It all counts. But we ice the cake with peptides that increase growth hormone production that, although they may not directly increase testosterone, they have an effect. And so as we see improvements in growth hormone, testosterone levels improve. And vice versa. As we do things to increase testosterone, we'll see 10, 20% improvements in growth hormone levels, even when they're not on a peptide or on actual growth hormone. So it's pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that you. Oh my gosh, I have so many questions and I have so much to tell you. And by the way, if you guys have not gotten Dr. Gershon's book, Beyond the Fountain of Youth, make sure that you go order it. I think it's available on Audible or I'm sorry, on Spotify, so you guys can listen to it if you want to order it. It's fantastic. It's all highlighted here. But before we do a deep dive and we go into the details of testosterone and so forth, can you maybe touch on the optimal? I love that you said we're looking to optimize, not just, mask this or put a band-aid on the symptoms. Can you talk about how the optimal ranges have changed too throughout the years that you've seen? Because the optimal ranges or the ranges, the average ranges are based off of a sick population. So I could imagine as the population gets more and more sick, the average goes down. Now a testosterone level that would have been like below average back 20 years ago is considered average now. So how can people, I guess, can we talk about that and how can people know that, hey, my testosterone levels are down or something's wrong? I need to see a doctor.
Right. Well, whether it's male or female, the goal is to have youthful levels where you were at 20 or 25. Okay, as I said, everybody felt good. I can't remember how I felt at 20, but you know what? I felt pretty damn good. I took everything for granted. It didn't matter whether I slept or not. I was ready to go at 7 in the morning. Well, that's not the case today. I need sleep, but you were bulletproof. Everything worked. Why? Because all of your hormones were in the optimal range. And so, as you mentioned, unfortunately, when you get a lab report and look at it and go see another provider, whether it's a quote hormone specialist, unfortunately, many OB-GYNs aren't as educated on optimizing hormones as they could or should be. So you want to look at listings for people from like the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine or Cenegenics or World Link Medical. There's a number of places that you can find someone, but the ranges are based on your age. And let's say the last 10,000 people that medical director saw. And so it's a bell curve and he arbitrarily picks a number here and over here. And that's normal. And that's the normals. Well, come on, it's not. As I tell a guy, and I saw a guy this was back 22 years ago when I started doing testosterone therapy. I think my testosterone was about 500. Well, in most labs, it's from 280 to 1,000 or 1,100. Now, I saw a guy this week that was 46 yesterday, just starting on my program. He found me online. His testosterone was 500. And I said, well, and a very successful business guy, lives here and in Austin. He's up here half the year and back in Texas, and financial analyst, has made enough money to be able to go wherever he wants. And I said, is that how you run your business at 50%? And what do you think the answer always is? Why, no, or hell no. And you give it 100%, and if you're like my dad, you gave everything 110%. And so, that's where we want to be. And it's not just the total testosterone. Actually, I don't even care about the total testosterone. It's what is the free testosterone for men and women. What is not bound to protein? It's only 1 to 2% of the total. So when a man's testosterone was 1,000, his free testosterone was probably up 20, 18 to 20. That's where I put everybody. I want them in the 20s all the time. For women, it's a different number. I don't care. As I saw a gal, I did a telemedicine visit with a woman in Wisconsin today, and who had been on the program and then stopped and came back. She's like, I feel terrible. And rightly so. Every single hormone we tested was zero. No estradiol, zero progesterone, zero testosterone. And for the first time, I saw on the lab, it said her free testosterone, unable to calculate. Well, it's a percentage of zero. It's zero. And so for women, I want it to be the free testosterone between 2 and 4, and which means the total could be 75 or 100, could be 200. Doesn't matter. There's a hormone that we all carry called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, and it's very difficult to lower it, change it. Actually, they say a high carb diet can lower SHBG, but I never tell anyone to follow a high carb diet. So, it's just there, and it binds the testosterone. It's only a very small amount, out of that 500, my free was maybe 10, 8 to 10. And so, it's rarely ever over 2%. And so that becomes the goal in optimizing all our levels. The same as with thyroid. It's very unfortunate. Even most endocrinologists don't properly treat thyroid. So you could look up Wilson syndrome. A friend of mine, Ken Wilson, discovered it, and it's subclinical hypothyroidism, low free T3. T3, like free testosterone, is the only part of the thyroid hormone that's really doing anything. Most doctors only look at TSH. Well, your TSH is fine, you're okay. Well, it has to be off. It's a bad test. It has to be really low before thyroid stimulating hormone. Your pituitary secretes FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, at increasing levels when it doesn't see enough estradiol, TSH when it doesn't see enough thyroid or free T3. And so those things are extremely important to be optimized. We can't just ignore it and put our head in the sand and say, well, yeah, testosterone or growth hormones, the end all be all. That's not the case. It's a harmony of hormones. So our hormones, as I said, started declining a long time ago, 1 to 3% a year, maybe even a bigger number than that now, because of all the outside influences that bombard us, from microplastics, you name it, all the toxins and glyphosate in our food sources. We don't even have to go there right now. Thank God we have Bobby Kennedy trying to do something about it, because he's a student of what we do and of this movement, which is a really good thing to know. But it all affects us, and we want to do whatever we can to feel our best, to be vibrant. You work your whole life to become successful and have a family that you love, and the kids, as they start to leave, what am I going to do now? Well, what if you don't have good health? If you don't have good health, you don't have anything. And I preached diet and exercise my whole career as a sports medicine physician, and it got frustrating because you could only do so much, and then it was chronic injuries and chronic inflammation, and my joints hurt. And, unless you're ready for a surgical repair, the orthopedist isn't going to be able to do much about that. But it's dramatic how much that quality of life, joint health, muscle pain, all those things change as we restore hormones for men and for women. So, yeah, it's really a big deal.
So we have a lot of spouses probably on this call right now. We have men on this call, women. What would you recommend that they ask for from their doctor? What panels should they be requesting on an annual basis? And if they're not requesting the panels, what signs and symptoms should they start looking for as men? Right? As women, I think we get hot flashes, or the signs are apparent, but what are the apparent signs for men?
Well, a
That's
couple
something to ask.
things, but with women, long before you're having hot flashes, your progesterone is low. PMS, poor sleep, lack of energy. Testosterone and progesterone drop 10 or 20 years before estradiol, before menopause. So I'll just say that so you have that to sleep on. But so what should they ask for? Well, one is the symptoms. As guys, it just gets harder to get off the couch. I've had guys and with everything from panic attacks to suicidal to just mood changes. They're blue. Let's not, honey, not tonight. Really? It's not intentional. They don't feel it and they can't. Brain fog, loss of mental focus, motivation, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Are they going to start a new project at work or home, or do want to do anything for you when they come in the door? Probably not. And so it is really important you can ask to have their hormones checked. I have things I call a routine hormone panel or comprehensive panel. You can order blood kits. I know you're working on something, and that will be tremendous when you can make that available to everyone in the near future, which really I'm excited about because people need to know where they're at. But Life Extension offers some mail-in kits, or just ask your physician. I want to know what's my free and total testosterone. When you check my thyroid, did you remember to add a free T3? I can tell you, I look at outside blood work all the time. People find me online, on social media, wherever, and call and want to come in, or I do telemedicine visits with people all over the world. Well, I had blood work done. Yeah, well, good. Send it to me. We need to take a look because I doubt that there's a free testosterone. There's probably not a free T3. And for women, we need estradiol, progesterone, testosterone free and total. Growth hormone, IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor is what we measure for growth hormone. And if not, and it's low, it should be where you were at 20, which was 200 to 250. The patient I mentioned, the gal in Wisconsin today, hers was 146. I generally start treating when it gets under 150. And peptides work really well to help get it to 180, 200, and sometimes into that sweet spot of 2 to 250. It's like that's where you were at 20. Nothing hurt. You felt great. Why wouldn't you want to maintain that? And so those are the things to ask for. And when we finish here, I'm open to being contacted if you need us to send something to get it done, or send an order to LabCorp for you to get it done, and you can take it into your provider, or schedule a telemedicine consult and we'll explain everything. And I know you're working on being able to provide that for all of your people, which is fantastic. So you can't rely on your annual physical. They do everything, or I had that in a stress test. Well, it's kind of lacking. It's unlikely that the free hormone levels were checked.
I have a question. So, weight obviously affects your hormones significantly. As more and more people are getting on GLP-1s and losing the weight, are you noticing a change and shift in their hormones, especially as it pertains to men?
I do, in the fact that And I have a lot of guys. I use, GLP-1s with, I don't know the percentage, more than half of the men that I treat. Um, because once we've gone down the road and lost muscle mass, gained more insulation, when they like, it's hard just to get motivated when you don't feel your best to be in the gym as much as you did. I have guys tell me all the time, I don't even want to go to the gym. Well, when you lose the weight first and feel better, it's a heck of a lot easier to get off the couch, get out in the morning, go for a walk, a run, do calisthenics, even if you're staying at home and doing it, and to start to see results. And obviously, better quality sleep and more exercise helps to increase your testosterone levels. Depending on what level it's at, it may or may not be enough, but it's a big deal. Everything matters, and doing it all together, eating healthy, getting sugar out of your life entirely, not even sniffing a candy bar. I mean, you just have to, I'm a carnivore
It
with
does.
a sweet tooth, unfortunately, but I do my best.
Now, are there, besides weight loss, we touched on that, are there other natural remedies or modifications that we can make to naturally increase our testosterone without having hormone replacement therapy?
Well, it gets to be pretty tough, because of the many multi-factors that got us there in the first place. Yes, cleaning up your diet and staying away from gluten, or, the problem is most bread and products with gluten have glyphosate at unbelievable comp. I saw somebody's child in the picture waving at us a second ago. I think Tiffany's. Don't even let them walk down the cereal aisle. Oh my God. Yeah, there's more glyphosate in that aisle than you could shake a stick at. It's not, it's so unhealthy. And, we've been lied to for so many years. So cleaning up the diet, sleeping well, staying positive spiritually and mentally. I mean, it all counts. And regular exercise. There's a few compounds out there. Shajal, I have a product I call Testa Boost on my website. I use it for men and women. It helps, but there comes a point when no, you've got to have some help. You either need to replace it, use the peptides that can affect growth hormone levels that have some crossover effect to testosterone as well.
Okay, now let's talk about the peptides, the GHRHs. There's sermorelin, there's tesamorelin, ipamorelin. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it, as it relates to testosterone and
Well,
hormones in general?
sure. I mean, I love all of those. I use sermorelin, tesamorelin with ipamorelin is my favorite. I just find it works better than ipamorelin alone. And I know that you're working on that one, which is great.
Coming very soon in the next couple of weeks.
Because that's the peptide that between that and sermorelin, those two really work the best, that combination. And as it improves growth hormone levels, as I said, there's a parallel shift. And as you have better muscle metabolism and you can exercise and get stronger, your testosterone will increase for men and women. As I said, it just depends how bombarded you've been with environmental factors, age. A few decades ago, it was 60 and up, and then 50 and up, and now 40s. And so once it gets to a low level, I saw a guy today, he's 44, his testosterone was 200. I'm like, how's that working? He's like, I needed my pellets 2 months ago. I said, well, you're here today, so let's get it fixed. But, it really is difficult to do on your own. The foundation is diet, exercise. I love the peptides to improve growth hormone along with kind of dragging testosterone with it, if you will. And who knows, they're working on a lot of research and a lot of things. Maybe we'll have a peptide that specifically alters testosterone in the near future. What I would mention, and I know we've talked about it before, and as we start treating younger men, guys in their 30s and 40s, I don't just automatically put them on testosterone. I use clomiphene, which are fertility drugs. But for men, they act like luteinizing hormone from the pituitary to send a message to the boys, as I call them, to make more to the factory, to try and increase production. That in combination with HCG, pregnal, human chorionic gonadotropin. It's called pregnal because HCG was the pregnancy hormone. It was in high levels when you were pregnant. Well, in controlled doses for men, it stimulates testosterone production. And so HCG and either N-clomiphene or clomiphene is what I start with almost all 30 something and 40 something year old guys, because I think I would be doing them a disservice if I just give them testosterone. So, because once you take it, you're kind of not going to make much more. And so that can work for men. Women, it's a little different, once those levels decline, since you don't have testicles, those products don't work the same. And so it's just a matter of either using testosterone sublingually or in a cream, something that can be easily used and well absorbed to improve that.
Yeah, someone just asked, how long should someone try in clomiphene before switching to HRT if adequate results aren't achieved?
It depends. I'll give guys about 6 months, and it depends. And as I said, I might start with enclomiphene, but I'll want them to use HCG together because that's the most powerful stimulus that we can give to increase testosterone production. And so if they get on a higher dose, and they're taking it, I'll start with them taking clomiphene Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and an injection a couple times a week. And that works well on many. If it doesn't, then I increase it to Monday through Friday and then every day. And if I don't see the response that we need, because they're not going to feel their best until it's somewhere around 1,000. And then I will just say, look, it's not working. Sometimes I'll know, I do lab work like 6 weeks after I start, and then at 3 months, every quarter from there on. If we get 6 weeks, 90 days down the road, and there's been no change, and people pay me to do what I do, I'm not going to just keep going. I'm like, this is not working. You need testosterone.
Mm. Gosh, so many questions are coming in. Is there a stack of peptides that can be used to help come off TRT therapy? Uh,
Well, again, that brings back to me something I never do, which is sort of the gym mentality. It's only okay to take these in a cycle or do this and then stop. No, we're talking about restoring optimal levels to where you were when you were your healthiest in your early 20s and keeping them there for the rest of your life. I have patients in their 80s that have been with me 13, 14 years. And the goal is still pretty darn close to the same. And they feel great. I have a 82-year-old woman that skied 100 days last winter. I just did her pellets a week or two ago. She feels fantastic. And, her husband likewise. And so, we want to be able to perform at a level as long as we're still cognitively there, which is a whole nother topic, particularly for women. I know this is a men's talk, but restoring all these hormones is a big deal for preventing Alzheimer's disease. It's one of the most important things you can do. And heart disease, the number one killer of women over 50 is a heart attack. Why is that? Because when estradiol drops, all the arteries get stiff and bad things happen. So it's so important for men and women to take this seriously. I tell people, become a student, and don't just read what some of the junk that's on the internet or the latest talking head has to say. Some of them are way off base. There are some really good guys, Peter Attia, Benazati. I have a podcast and try to share the word as much as we can. But it's important to personalize it and learn all you can yourself and find a provider that can help lead you down the road and help you to make the best decisions possible.
I know testosterone is the star of the show, but like women, men also have other hormones within their body. How much more, I guess, apparent is it when there are shifts in estrogen and other hormones within a man's body? How much more apparent is it? And what can they do about it? What are the noticeable signs and symptoms of like high estrogen levels and so forth?
You
Can you
know,
touch
it's
on that?
interesting. Yeah, for many years we thought estrogen was bad for men. And I took personally and prescribed estrogen blockers for 13 years. And my mentor, Dr. Rouzier, said, well, show me one article that shows where it's bad. And I couldn't show him anything. And so there's been a big rift in our community of providers, and more have switched to the fact that we need estradiol. It's probably one of the most important things for erectile function with low and with cardiac function. You need estradiol, and you need it. It lowers bad LDL cholesterol. It has many benefits, and of course erectile function in men. You need it. So when I see guys, hey, this says my estradiol is 40, that's high. I'm like, good, that's great. You know, your LDL will be better and you can still have an erection. So, which they're like, oh, well, I didn't know that. And as my mentor, Dr. Rouzier, said, if you want to give a guy erectile dysfunction, wipe out his estradiol. And so for years, I thought it was bad to be high, and it isn't. And since I've stopped, I have hundreds of men that I do not give estrogen blockers to, and they are great. They feel fine. They're not growing breasts, and nothing bad's happening. So, it is important to look at everything. I'm not sure I answered your question completely. I always, in my panels, I put everyone on DHEA. DHEA is a hormone you can buy over the counter. It metabolizes naturally to all your hormone levels. It's important for mood. It has anti-cancer benefits. There are studies a couple of years ago that showed that people that had the highest natural levels of DHEA had a lower incidence of colon cancer. And so it's just, one of those things. I never miss that. I take 10,000 of vitamin D every day. I've got two giant pill counters. I have to do a handful before the shower, a handful after, and some of them at bedtime. It's like, all right, that's enough. I can't take any more pills today. But we do micronutrient testing. We do biologic age testing, which would be a real interesting thing for you to incorporate. I love it, to be able to look at biologic versus chronologic age, pace of aging, status of our immune system. It's all affected by hormones. Hormones are the key. And so, yes, we start doing GLP-1s and getting in better shape and exercising more and feeling better about ourselves. But nobody's immune to the effects of aging. We're all going to go through this. And so why wait? Why not be proactive? Why not make a study of longevity and do everything you can? I mean, that's the key to a vibrant life is I'm 72. I feel better now than I did at 50. And I hope I don't look too bad. But, I feel great. I played golf 5 days in a row last week for my member guest tournament and still went out on Sunday and played again. And I was a little tired, but I don't think I could have done that if I wasn't, my testosterone level wasn't 1,000.
I love it. You're optimized. Jay wrote, thank you, Doc, for not demonizing estrogen, estradiol in men. No need to block it. Great stuff. So thank you for touching on that. Optimized testosterone. Now, I'd love for you to discuss. I mean, this is a nice segue into erectile dysfunction. You touched on that, but what are the common, I'd like to talk about hair loss and then erectile dysfunction. But first, what are the common causes of ED in men?
Well, I would say the most common is low testosterone. You know, there's a poor diet, too much sugar, being overweight, stress, high cortisol levels is terrible, and it suppresses growth hormone and testosterone. And so, working on all of the things that we talk, like I said, you have to really address everything, but getting testosterone levels checked, not taking no for an answer from a provider that says your testosterone of 500 or 600 is okay. What's my free testosterone? If it's not at least above 15 or 16, close to 20, it's not okay, and it should be addressed. And so that's really important. Blood flow, why do we get atherosclerosis? Whole other topic. It's not, cholesterol is not the killer. I tell people all the time, cholesterol is not going to kill anybody. It's inflammation, too much sugar, and then if you have fats and there's inflammation in your arteries, the body wants to heal. And so it starts laying down this plaque. Well, that's not really a good thing. And it's not a good thing either if it's in the arteries that go to the sexual organs. And so, it's a kind of a number of factors that affect it, but definitely important to start with the bases: hormones, glucose, blood sugar, diet intake, and not taking no for an answer, researching until you get the answer you want, until you feel your best.
Do you recommend GLPs to all of your patients, even on microdose levels for men and women?
Not on everyone, but I think it has so many benefits from longevity, cardiovascular, over a 30% reduction in heart attack and stroke rates. Yes, those studies were done in diabetics, but it's certainly been extrapolated to everybody in the longevity field. And so I like them a lot. I think microdosing is something that I was against initially, and I'm kind of getting on the bandwagon because I think it makes sense. Why not? The goal, I put everybody on metformin. Well, now I don't, if they're on a GLP-1. The goal for your 60-day glucose average, or A1C, normal is anything 5.6 or less. Well, if you want to stick around a while, it should be 5.4 or less. And so sugar is the devil. We don't want high sugar. And so for that reason, I think microdosing GLP-1s is brilliant and now readily accessible, which is great. Well, all of the peptides have a place in this. I mean, it's a symphony of things that need to be done. There's not one single thing that works, that it all matters. And as I said before, I saw a question pop up. Yeah, I like CJC 1295 with ipamorelin, but it doesn't work as well as tesamorelin and ipamorelin combination. That one works really the best. I don't even prescribe the CJC anymore. It's readily available, but I like that combination, and I have a handful of guys that just prefer sermorelin. So, they all work, and then I prescribe human growth hormone when necessary. It's expensive, but so the peptides look a lot better when you're in the price category.
Yeah, I love testosterone's effects on visceral fat. I mean, it's just it's, it's a great peptide all around with the pamrela. Now, besides that, are there any other peptides that you recommend for men struggling with low energy or hormonal imbalance?
Well, all of those that I mentioned, and I failed to mention PT141 when we were talking about ED. PT1, whether you have ED or not, it's a pretty fun peptide. It works extremely well, and you want to make sure you don't have any place to go for a while after you take it.
We also have the thrill pill, which is oxytocin, PT141, and tadalafil. So we have that combo too
That's
for
great.
men and women. Don't go anywhere afterwards.
Okay, may have to send me some.
Aw.
But yeah, I think that it works extremely well, and it's whether you, I think on any of the peptides, sub-Q injection works best, but the nasal sprays also work, and it's dose dependent, and everyone tends to have a little different. Um, thanks. Everyone has a little
He's
different.
blushing now.
Yeah, I am. My face just turned red. a different perspective on how well things work. And so if a nasal spray with NAD works for you, you don't have to do self-injection. If it's PT-141 and it works, great. So, you know, they're all effective. Sometimes some methods are more effective than others.
Hmm. So, and on average, what would you say? How long will it take for a lot of these peptides to really take into effect and for someone to see the results? And what do the results look like for both men and women in this
Well,
case?
yeah, it really depends. You know, I tell people even when they start actual growth hormone, it's not overnight. It can take 2 months, 3 months, or longer to see all the effects when it comes to body composition. However, I think muscle tone, tension, improving collagen, seeing a reduction in lines and wrinkles. When you see somebody that's been on one of the peptides to improve growth hormone, a woman, let's say, 6 months later or a year later, they don't look the same. Their skin is more vibrant. They're kind of radiant. They just look different. I tend to feel like I worked out today, even if I didn't. You just have better muscle tone. And so I think those are some of the long-term effects and then never being able to get the smile off your face.
Well, let me ask you, for anyone new to this world and they're listening, they're like, what growth hormone and can you explain the difference for our listeners here, the difference between a peptide like tesamorelin, ipamorelin versus taking growth hormone, synthetic growth hormone?
Well,
What the
sure.
difference between the two?
Yeah, the end result is roughly the same. The peptides stimulate increases of growth hormone, releasing hormone from the pituitary. They are a more physiologic way to get the job done. And if you respond well to them, some people better than others, then to me, that's the best way to do it. That's why I start younger men on enclomiphene or clomiphene and HCG, because it's more physiologic. So in my mind, is that healthier? Well, there's nothing not healthy about using testosterone or growth hormone, but why shut things down? Because if we give that initially, you're never going to make more. You don't have to. The pituitary doesn't even send releasing hormones because it sees great levels in your bloodstream. And so, it's a philosophical thing. I like to do it that way because I feel that's a little better and it's best for the patient. And I care about the people that I see and treat that trust me and the way I feel. So, I like it best for those reasons, but I still have plenty of people that I use human growth hormone with. If the peptides aren't working, I'm like, hey, it's time to do this, and here's the source I have to get it, and which is hopefully a little less than most places, but still. So I do both.
So in other words, the peptides help your body's natural production versus the other one trying to mimic what your body already produces, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's shift to, okay, Melissa Rowe, what is your recommendation magic stack for an overall healthy midlife gal and for men as well?
But
Your
again,
magic
I
stack.
don't use the term stacking anything. I build a foundation. I call it baking the cake. People get that scenario, and then after we bake it, we'll ice it. So for men, it's testosterone, DHEA, or maybe HCG and enclomiphene, whatever it is to restore normal levels. Micronutrients, we do micronutrient testing. I do fit gut testing, something we haven't even talked about. I want to look for components of leaky gut syndrome. For reactivity, we do a test that looks at 176 different foods, and it's usually shocking. You can't believe some of the things you like the most are the worst for you as far as producing inflammation. So that test is not a food allergy test, but foods what creates inflammation, because again, inflammation is really bad. And so we want to restore all the levels so we have less it's inversely related. The better your natural hormone levels, the lower levels of inflammation you have, lower levels of cortisol. And for women, it's progesterone and testosterone initially, at some point, estradiol. And so once that's done, then we're looking at other things. What's the magic stack? I don't know. I add, the GLP-1s to that, peptides. It's just, there's a lot of things that we do and that Ellie offers that all you got to do is thumb through and look. Most all of it has very beneficial effects for you and your long-term health.
Right. It sounds like it's dependent on what you're trying to achieve. How about for energy and performance? Would you recommend NAD to your patients? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I love NAD. We do NAD infusions, which take 4 hours. We give trimethylglycine prior so that they don't have the big NAD rush. I use a product called Real NAD that is made as a sublingual rapid dissolve, so you don't have to take NMN and other precursors. And NAD, I just ordered mine from you. NAD nasal spray. So self-injections, I do 2 to 3 days a week of NAD at home, and the people that are on the injections absolutely love it. They're like, wow, this stuff is incredible.
Hmm. I agree. Now, just quickly, because someone asked and I'd like to touch on it, but hair loss in men, what are the common causes besides stress? Stressed
Well,
out.
unfortunately, your parents have a lot to say about that. To the contrary, people think testosterone causes hair loss. I don't see that. I see people grow hair, and everywhere. So, there's just blood flow, toxins in our environment. There's so much we're bombarded with. And so when we use platelet-rich plasma or exosomes, it stimulates and improves the health of those hair follicles, kind of wakes up dormant follicles, improves blood flow, improves quality of hair. And so it's and of course, nutritional supplement. I have a big vitamin line. We also share Nutrifol's vitamins. There's B vitamins, a number of vitamins that we know are healthy to produce better hair, whether it grows more or not. And the goal is to try to improve the health of the scalp and of those blood vessels and hair follicles so they grow. I saw somebody ask about GHK copper. I think it's great, and I'm just using it more and more these days. For skin quality, hair, inflammation, I think that it's great. Is it too late to grow hair? Yes and no. I think 6 months to a year, if somebody's bald as a billiard cube, it's not coming back. They need other options. I have Alan Ballman in Boca Raton, who's probably one of the top guys in the country. He's one of my buddies and mentors. And he'll say, if they've lost it and it's been within 6 months to maybe a year, those dormant follicles will usually respond to PRP or exosomes. Exosomes to me it's just PRP on steroids. For platelet-rich plasma to work, you have to do it, 3 injections, 2 to 4 weeks apart, and then for it to work best, you got to do it twice a year. Well, it ends up costing as much as exosome therapy does if you just did it initially, because sometimes you only need 1 or 2 injections over the course of a year. I had exosome scalp injections. It's been 3 years. And, I had been speaking at an event for another company, and I saw a picture with a reflection off the top of my head. I'm like, whoa, who is that guy? We got to do something about that. And
Mhm.
so the before and after pictures on my website are me just 6 months after one injection. I did it again at 2 years. That was almost 2 years ago. I keep threatening to do it, but I end up sharing it with a patient instead. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm just a chicken, but um, they were
Dr.
good.
Gershon, with just the few minutes that we have left, I want to be respectful of your time. I want you to just touch on your book. And I kept seeing messages come in like, how do I make an appointment with you? And where can we find you? How do we get in contact with your office? Can you touch on why you wrote this book? And it's available on both Spotify and you can purchase it or
Yeah,
listen to
it's
it.
on Amazon. It's actually a bestseller on Amazon now, which I'm really proud of. And it's just launched on Spotify and one of their other platforms a few weeks ago. I do have it in an ebook format as well, so you can put it on your phone. I wrote it, I've been working on it. I came up with the title 5 years ago, and I've wanted to do it for probably longer than that. I get so many questions, and it's like, oh, not again. I go back to the beginning, and although I love doing this and explaining it to everyone, it you're not going to hear it from your family doctor. There are more and more guys going to seminars with companies like Avexia that teaches pellet therapy and so forth. It takes a while to become an expert. But they can still be helpful. Unfortunately, God, I've been doing this 20 years and I still have people say, well, my cardiology buddies, or my golf buddy's a cardiologist or a urologist, and they say I'm going to have cancer or this. Well, that's just not true. There's a ton of literature to show that estradiol is breast protective, and the medical literature ignores that. That testosterone does not cause prostate cancer. I had prostate cancer 2 years ago, and 90 days after I was treated, my testosterone was 1,000 again, and my PSA's still 0.3. Well, that would have been, I still have guys that are told by well-meaning conventional physicians that you can never do that again. So they wipe it out with blockers, and those guys' death rate, their mortality rate is higher than the ones that don't even have treatment. So it's shocking, but it is really a big deal. I'm real excited. The leading urologist in the world, Abraham Morgentaler, is speaking here in Aspen on the 6th of August, and I'm going to be there because he's my hero. I've got his article on my screen. Every time I hear that complaint, I print it and hand it to him. I'm like, look, this is called the saturation model. We know for you guys above 249, the prostate does not recognize more testosterone, just doesn't. So he proved it. He biopsied men on placebo, which I don't know who signed up for that, and men on testosterone, and there was no difference. And so that is pretty exciting stuff. I got on a tangent because I love talking about the reason why I wrote the book was because I wanted to be able to tell the story to more people. And now, it was just testosterone and bioidentical hormones for years. And now it's stem cell therapy and infusions and eventually CRISPR and gene therapy. And there's so much going on that it's good to know and be informed. So when things start changing, you go, hey, maybe that guy was right. Maybe I'll get a blood test. So you can find me on my website, aspen-regenerativemedicine.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram. You can message us. My podcast is out there. And if you need somebody to help you get some labs ordered, we'll send you to LabCorp anywhere in America, and it takes about a week to get results back. And then we can do a little telemedicine visit, or just take the results if you find someone. It doesn't have to be me. I'm more than happy to speak with anyone. But I thank you for this time. It's exciting stuff for me. I'll be
Thank
all
you.
charged up here for a while.
No, thank you. So you are taking new patients. If someone wants to get in contact with you,
Sure.
you do provide telemedicine support. So if anyone's interested, you like this talk, please go find Dr. Gershon at aspen-regenerativemedicine.com. And thank you so much, Dr. Gershon. Thank you for being here educating our community. This was a fantastic talk. What a way to kick off our men's circle. This is incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you all for tuning in and educating yourself on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Thank you so, so much. Tune in next time, next month. And Dr. Gershon, this is not going to be the last time we're going to see you, right?
Not at all.
Not at all. We're going to see more of you. And please find his book on Amazon, Beyond the Fountain of Youth. Thank you again. And
Thanks. My
yeah,
pleasure. Yeah.
have a wonderful night, everyone. And thank you. Take care. Good night.